The Houthis are saying they targeted 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea. You had greater than even odds on this happening. It seems like it may be coming to fruition right now.
Right, Kayleigh. I'm afraid it is. Round 2-0 of the military conflict of this is going to be broader than probably round 1-0 was, unfortunately. You know, the Houthis have the capability, we believe, to actually destroy the Yanbu terminal. That would even be worse. So in some ways, we would be lucky if all they did was take some shots at some ships and things. And hopefully that won't expand, and if they do, we can suppress that. But the risks are great, not only to shipping, but also to energy infrastructure, which on the oil side, so far, whether it's in the Gulf or the Red Sea, has avoided, damage.
Rapidan has had some of the best analysis geopolitically and specific to the energy market since this started. Bob, you and your colleagues are experts on this, and I know that you probably don't want to be right about most of these things, but you've turned out to be. If 2.0 is worse than 1.0, do we retest the highs of $120 a barrel?
Yeah, I begin every briefing and comment with, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong about what I'm about to say. Look, the reason we didn't go higher is we had some one-offs and some buffers that were used, strategic stocks. China went on a crash diet, but we know a crash diet, you can't live that way forever. When you come off of it, you're pretty hungry, and China's coming back. And we were able to sneak out some more oil in June. The military did a good job at that. But as we look into the fall, we've exhausted those buffers, and increasingly prices are going to have to do the work. So to answer your question, well, Rapidan, we're looking at a low $100 range, 100 to 110 in the coming weeks. But the risk is way to the upside, because even as we sit here today, even at $94 Brent, there's enormous optimism in the price. One of the distinctive features of this whole thing has been an entrenched optimism among traders. Look at equities, haven't even looked back since early April. And I think that optimism is unwarranted. And I think that bubble could burst. And if so, we're going to reprice much higher, I'm afraid.
But a lot of it could be dependent on China, as we don't have a lot of transparency into how much they had at the onset or how much they may have now. How much are they going to hold potentially, in the way OPEC used to, the future of global energy prices, at least for a time, in their hands?
Well, so far they've been acting as that swing refiner, swing importer, if you will. I think there were some reports that they actually resold some cargoes of crude they had bought. So, but we think at Rapidan, we think they're starting to come back. They want to resume this fall that SPR, strategic inventory filling. They're going to let their refiners make some money. They want to chase these record high refining margins. One of the reasons they cut back is they said their refiners, nope, we're going to cut back on imports. Well, now they're letting them chase those margins. So we think China's going to be creeping up in its imports by a couple million barrels a day into the fall. No sign they were willing to dump a lot of their strategic stocks. They're using some of them, but not a lot. So China only goes so far. And like I said, we've pretty much spent close to doing all the SPR releases. So we're out of buffers. Demand curtailment through price increases will have to do the work going forward if this persists.
Well, the president said today, a short time ago in Georgia, that we don't need the straits, the word that he used. Realizing this is a global market, how could that be true?
Yeah, well, it's true in a physical sense. We don't import much from there. But it's incorrect in a price sense. As you say, the oil market is global. Supply disruption everywhere leads to a price increase everywhere, including here. Gasoline's now $4.06 and rising. Diesel's over $5 a gallon. The president has also learned and seen over and over again that when prices rise, it becomes an issue for us. And those strategic stocks aren't really about, or our import dependence, it's not so much about where we physically get the oil, right? Because we do import crude still. We get it from safe places. That hasn't been our issue. The issue is our vulnerability to these price shocks. And remember, we have low taxes, right? The rest of the world pays a much higher tax. So they don't see that volatility. But we Americans, we see it in the pump price right away. Doesn't make us happy. So we need Hormuz in the sense of we need stable oil prices.
Well, and you mentioned diesel prices. Obviously, a factor in that as well is Russia, which has had a number of refineries hit, which now has a ban on its own diesel exports, and which potentially, depending on the action of the United States Congress, could be facing tighter sanctions in the form of secondary tariffs that will be applied to buyers of its energy. We were told by Senator Rand Paul on Capitol Hill last night that sanctions package could lead to economic catastrophe for that reason. And I wonder how you're viewing it.
Well, I think the bill will also give the president some authority to implement it, and I think he'll use that and so forth. But you're right. Look, just as with crude oil, we had these offsets, with products, it went the wrong way. The second largest diesel exporter after the United States, Russia, 40%, 50% of its refining capacity is gone. It banned it. China, as I said earlier, they curtailed exports of refined products. So we kind of went negative. And if you look at those markets, it's a tale of two markets. Crude has been kept contained. It's starting to go up again. Refined products are super tight, margins at all-time highs, and rising still.
So we're seeing shares of Valero, Marathon hit new all-time highs on a daily basis. They have charts like tech companies right now. How vulnerable are we to a refining shock? We're walking into the real part of hurricane season. Any number of things could go wrong on the Gulf Coast when we have such limited capacity. You said it, $4.06. Where are we going for gas?
No, you're right. And my colleagues on the refining side and the oil analysis side pointed out that when you run your refineries hot, and we have been, utilization rates at 95% persistently over and over again, I mean, you delay maintenance, you choose to run that refinery, but at some point, these refineries need work. They need downtime and repairs and things. And as we get into the fall, we're going to need to do that work. At the same time, these margins are going to be great. And then comes the risk of storms, unplanned outages. And we do see it's about 500,000 to 600,000 barrels a day of refining capacity is at risk to unplanned outages when you've sort of driven your refineries so hard for so long. So it is a precarious thing. You know, look, going into the July 4th weekend, it was a different world, right? Brent had retraced back to $70, and the market was betting on a sort of ballet, an elegant normalization of Hormuz just as these buffers wore off, and then hopefully kill that refining tightness. But it's not working out that way.